Thanks, Brian. So welcome everybody to another LSO breakfast webinar series. These ones, we get to sleep in a little bit for these ones. We usually start a lot earlier. I'm really looking forward to the presentations today because it's going to be great to hear from some wonderful Canadian success stories. And one of the reasons why I volunteered to moderate this was partly because I'm an LSO board member and on the breakfast committee, organizing committee, but also, you know, the company that I work with. So I'm Ann Woods from Silicon Valley Bank. I should have done that first. And Silicon Valley Bank really is the only bank that's 100% focused on the innovation economy. I've been with the bank for 18 months. And what really, drew me there was the success of the life science and healthcare practice. So we have, well over 3,000 life science companies bank with us. If you look at sort of the top companies in the sector, so if you look at VC-backed life science companies that have gone public in 2020, close to 2/3 of them are SVB clients. And if we actually expand that out and look at companies that have gone public over the last 3 years, almost 75% bank with SVB. So, you know, what we do with these companies is full banking services from, you know, loans and, credit cards and asset management and all of those great things. So we're hoping now that we can have that same success that we've had in the US and Europe in Canada. So it's great to hear from 3 great Canadian companies. As I said, they're all, you know, very unique and different from each other and stories of wonderful innovation. So I've got Jeff, Cameron, and John, and they're each going to present a little bit about their companies and where they are now and you know where they've come from since they won Company of the Year at the LSO Awards Gala. And we'll let each of them present, and then we'll bring them all back at the end for Q&A. So I know I've got some questions prepared, but I really encourage you throughout the presentation to just type your questions into the Q&A box. There is the opportunity to vote them up. So if there's a question that somebody else asked that you'd really like to hear the answer to, you can vote for that. And we'll try to get through as many questions as we can this hour. We're going to wrap up at 10 o'clock. And with that, I will hand it over to Jeff for the first presentation.
Thanks very much, Anne. I'm a little uncomfortable with the title of Great Canadian Success Story. I consider us a little bit more of still an emerging success in progress. We were the 2013 award winners, and I feel like we're still in some ways trying to grow into those shoes. But hopefully you can learn a little bit from our journey that may be helpful to you. So who are we at EcoSynthetix? We create biopolymers from nature. So our primary feedstock is corn, and that corn product represents about 99% of what goes into our chemistry. We take the raw corn product and we transform it through a proprietary process called reactive twin screw extrusion. So we're basically putting mechanical energy and some additional chemistry tweaks to the corn backbone and turning that into a functionalized polymer that we can use in various industries and various applications. I'll share with you what some of those end markets are that we serve. But ultimately, we come out of our process with a dry product, a dry polymer, that's typically competing with wet products, so wet chemistries that are made through typical chemistry processes. And so one of the environmental benefits of all of our polymers is that they ship dry around the world and therefore save quite a bit in terms of shipping cost and water usage for our customers. Lastly, as a disruptive technology in the chemistry in this industry, you can't just send a jar of something to a customer and expect that they're going to use it well. So we've had to invest quite a bit in engineering solutions to be able to help our customers implement our polymers successfully. And that was kind of I'll say a mid-stage learning for us. We did have great products, but helping our customers to actually implement them successfully was at least half the battle as we began to build some success. So next slide. So where are our products today? The first market we began to serve was in paper coatings. So if you think about magazine paper or a cake box with printing, fancy printing on it, We provide a coating product that replaces styrene butadiene or styrene acrylic latexes. And we provide that sort of glossy, nice coating surface, but we do it with a bio-based product. In the paper industry, with some of the pressures that they face, it has been first and foremost about cost reduction, but more and more it is about the green impact that we can have on paper companies and serving the CPGs that are looking for greener solutions. So that remains still today the lion's share of our revenue and our cash flow. But we've used some of the foundations from that market to diversify into some new spaces. And as you can see there, wood composites and personal care were the next two. In the wood space, we are the glue that holds wood particles together in particles like particle board for furniture, MDF for flooring. And in doing that, we're replacing formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen. And we're also doing it again with a product that reduces the carbon footprint of products like furniture, let's say for companies like IKEA, who happens to be our main partner in that space. And then much more recently, we've found some very interesting use of our biopolymer in personal care products. And the first market that we're serving there is actually hair fixatives. So if you think about a biopolymer that coats things to hold a paper coating in place or wood particles in place, it also is pretty effective at holding your hair in place. And so we've had some interesting inroads there. It's a fun market to be in, a little bit more racy, let's say, than paper and wood composites. And in the early stages of becoming a third success or a third leg on the stool for us. So next slide. We chose markets, and this is an important part of our journey. Our biopolymer has, I'll say, almost limitless potential in terms of the markets and applications it can serve. And one of the things we had to do was decide which ones were the ones we could really focus on, identify some big market opportunities where we had a good value proposition, and go after some big things. So you can see the chemistries on the right-hand side there that we're replacing in each of those markets I described. They all represent pretty substantial markets, and just entering them in a meaningful way gets us off to a good start in terms of generating some revenue and cash flow to bring a business through its emerging stages. Next slide. Yeah, so our roadmap, where have we come from? How has our journey through the LSO award impacted us, and how have we changed since then? 2011 was an important year for us. We had this one product for paper coatings replacing styrene-based latexes. We had our first two big customers, two of the top 20 paper producers in the world, and the world looked like our oyster. And so we were at a very interesting time in the capital markets when clean tech was kind of the new darling, and we were able to get a $100 million IPO done, which at the time was the largest clean tech IPO in Canadian history. We also were able to secure a $10 million SDDC grant to build our laboratory and our pilot manufacturing facility in Burlington, Ontario. And you can say we were off to the races with a big start. We had a pile of neat awards, and our team was growing, and our prospects looked pretty good. As often happens, you get a pile of money and a bunch of awards and lots of accolades, and you want to do everything. And we definitely tried to do that. So we had many interesting application opportunities for our biopolymer. We wanted to do all of them. One of those opportunities was realized into some very interesting IP in aptamer bioconjugate drug delivery devices. So essentially using our nanoparticles as a vehicle for targeted treatment of cancer. And I think it was that really connected us with LSO. We were, as we looked across all these different industries, we were joining every industry association. We were hiring experts from every one of these markets, and LSO was pretty helpful in getting us an understanding and some important connections into this interesting space. As we expanded very broadly, our cash was beginning to expire, and so this was kind of maybe the turning point in our thinking. As our prospects were still looking good, we weren't yet really realizing on those prospects. And so if we can flip to the next slide. Yeah, the paper business had now been a going concern for about 7 years. It was still not standalone profitable, and we were trying to do the same thing in multiple other industries. So we didn't have a foundation really of success on which to grow. We had 36 different product development projects on the go, which was almost 1 per 2 people. And you can imagine you're not getting a whole lot done if you have that lack of focus. We were burning over 6 million in cash a year, had a $10 million EBITDA loss in 2015, and our market capitalization had gone from just over 500 million at the IPO down to 80 million. So some alarm bells were beginning to ring. And it was transformation time. If we didn't realize that internally, we were being told externally that we better start doing some things differently. So our board was pretty much completely changed out at that time, including putting a new chairman in place who happens to be last year's LSO Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Paul Lucas. Paul continues to be our chairman today. And we set about on a pretty simple plan to change the business. First and foremost, we had this going concern business in paper. We needed to make that profitable on a standalone basis to show that if we were going to do other things, that we were actually going to grow from something that had been proven profitable as a product and as a set of operations. We used really simple, kind of our own version of stage gate and portfolio management to focus on the things that had the strongest value proposition. And as importantly, where we had real blue chip partners that said, if you guys can do this, we're going to buy that product in large quantities from you. And then we said, here's the things that, that sort of yields as our focus. And we right-sized our footprint to match our progress and what those opportunities needed. Through that transformation process, the medical related applications we spun out with one of our co-founders. He took the IP and an arrangement between us on product support and founded a company in Michigan called Greenmark Biotechnologies. And they're focused on caries identification, early caries identification in dental work, and then the longer term goal of using our nanoparticles as a drug delivery vehicle. Next slide. And we've stayed on that roadmap. So I mentioned that one of the critical things for us has been in those markets we chose to focus on is establishing blue chip customers. That probably rises to the top in terms of success criteria for entering these new markets. In the wood panel space, early on we started working with the 3rd largest panel producer in the world. They've continued to grow their use of our product. And throughout all that, IKEA has been an incredible partner for us. They actually use 1% of the world's wood every year. If you want to take that in terms of how big they are in terms of the furniture market, but just in terms of the world in their wood usage. So we're continuing to work with them, and they represent really the watershed of changing resins towards something that's healthier and greener. In personal care, we're working with the largest chemical company in the world as our development partner and marketing partner. And in the paper industry, we continue to work with, I think, 7 or 8 of the top 20 paper companies in the world. So we stuck to the plan, and the plan has step by step. It is a grind. We talked offline at the beginning here about how long it takes, but it takes time and it takes focus. And I think this kind of roadmap has at least proved successful for us. Yeah, I think I mentioned these points, but I guess maybe the overriding one is just, especially even in the last year, the emphasis by retailers and their whole supply chains on greener products has been a really exciting catalyst for us. We feel a little bit like we were ahead of our time with some of the things we had, but they are in very strong demand today. And we feel we can have a pretty big impact on large companies' pursuits of reducing their carbon footprint. And that's really how we define overall what we do. Today, I guess just to sum up what we've accomplished through that focus plan, we've restored some of our market capitalization. We have more eyeballs on us today as a result of the interest in green technology. We remain debt-free, and we've managed to preserve a pretty decent cash balance as a backstop and an opportunity to grow into some further new spaces as opportunities present themselves. So be happy to take questions when we get to the Q&A. Thank you.
That's great, Jeff. I would argue that you are a great Canadian success story. I think that's fantastic, and I'm going to look at IKEA completely differently now when I when I buy something from there. That's fantastic. And the personal care piece made me laugh because I don't know if anybody's seen the Gorilla Glue story in the news where someone used spray Gorilla Glue to fix their hair. So hopefully you'll be able to solve some of those problems. So next up we have Cameron, who is the CEO of Synaptive Medical. So I will hand the floor to you, Cameron.
Okay, thanks, Anne. And thanks, Jeff. I really appreciated your talk, and maybe a couple themes, common themes we'll find through our talks today. So no slides. I thought I'd just kind of talk to where we've been, what we've done as a company. And I personally, I'm an engineer from Waterloo, and long interested in med tech, and joined Medical Biophysics, University of Toronto, Sunnybrook. And through the course of my research, spun out a technology to do better screening using MRI. And so the thought was we could detect more cancer earlier stage and differentiate cancer better if you used MR. The challenge was there's a 10-fold cost difference between mammography and MRI. And I plugged away at that project, worked on RF technology to reduce scan time, improving the signal, and then really built up a company with all the peripheral elements of what was needed to make it something you could walk into a hospital and provide the entire solution. So software for analytics of the images, and then biopsy instrumentation to actually do a diagnostic on the tumor. And that company was kind of 5 years and a bit of a straight line. We kind of doubled our revenue every year, and sold the company to Hologic in 2010, and you know, thought I knew hardship, but it was a pretty relatively easy endeavor for us, and we felt like it was, you know, great experience. So we went back in. We decided to do something much bigger, and that's really what kicked off Synaptive Medical. So we started in 2012. We actually started in the Mars building, and just 5 of us, and grew very rapidly over about 3-4 years. And very honored to get the LSO award in 2017. And what we really did was a bigger endeavor where we really wanted to focus on not just building part of an MRI system, but we built the entire system. And so we had many phased products coming out. We listened very diligently to our customers of what they wanted. And what they wanted was something that was very ambitious, which was finally a solution that really provided the ecosystem in a surgical suite that provided them the information they needed to progress surgery. And so we went about this in a phase of products. We developed a software product that would take imaging from the MRI systems that are out there today and create maps that would show connectivity patterns in the brain. And that technology is called diffusion imaging. It's something MRI is very good at. MRI is very good at detecting soft tissue contrast, the ability to detect flow and movement. And if you detect slow flow, you can actually trace out white matter tracks in the brain. So you can really see these structures that otherwise you just can't see any other way. And so we methodically kind of launched really transformative technologies in surgical planning, integration of robotics and optics, and in the background funding the development of an MRI system from the ground up. And we know that MRI systems on their own are very expensive initiatives. Companies like Samsung have been trying for a decade, actually decades almost, to build an MRI system, and spending billions of dollars. And we just thought we had a better idea that fundamentally, based in physics, could let us do a much smaller MR system. And so quite a big endeavor, especially for a Canadian company. So we've raised to date over $250 million US, and did it in stages. And just that we got our LSO award, I think we brought in 50-60 million US dollars, and growth was pretty steady. And at that time we brought in a big team. So we kind of tried to reform ourselves like a mini Medtronic or Stryker, and doubled our headcount over that period, and brought in a lot of really high salaries, and our structure went from fairly flat to very hierarchical, and doubled the headcount, tripled the spend, and the revenue didn't triple, but our install base continued to grow. And we were introducing 3 fundamentally different ideas, the integration of tractography, robotics, and optics linked together in surgery, and then a small point of care MR system, which we really felt this combined solution is the right answer for surgery. And it just takes time sometimes, and it takes some time to cross that chasm. It takes time for those papers to go out. It takes time for the podium speeches to really sink into people's brain. And so our spend was ahead of our revenue growth. And we corrected that. We corrected it pretty aggressively at the beginning of this year, and took that headcount down and financed the company to get us to break even, and really quite proud we've done that. We've brought in all the capital we needed. Great support from BDC invested, which is fabulous, and got our cost structure down about 5-fold reduction in burn, and actually put a lot more focus on R&D. So really completing the solution. And now we're there. We got FDA approval on our MR system just in April, and launched our last or third generation, but really finished out the feature set that's needed to make our system, the ability to really replace other technologies in operative suite. We partnered with Linamar to really help us scale up manufacturing without doing a huge expansion and expense. We partnered with Stryker to allow us to really take our sales team from 10 people in the field up to 1,600. And those partnerships have really let us get our cost structure under control, but also get our feet in the street to be able to show our technology to more people. And so much like Jeff, we kind of got ahead of our skis a little bit. We corrected, and now we're on track to being profitable. And it's a great time to be in medtech. We're looking at our options to be a public company, and we're expanding, but expanding under the focus of being a profitable company right now. So exciting times for us, but certainly 3 years there after the LSO award that were tough. And I spent a lot of time raising money opposed to selling product and developing technology. And so now we're back selling and growing, and actually growing even in the current COVID environment. So a lot of great lessons. I'm very happy to share all of them with you today. It's not easy being a medtech company in Canada, but the ecosystem has just grown so immensely. You're just seeing very different stories out there, and appreciate the chance to tell our story today.
Thanks, Cameron. I love that theme that's emerging, that it isn't, it's a bumpy road. Like, success doesn't come easily, and you've got to be prepared to make some tough choices along the way that are going to feel pretty painful at the time. So our last presenter is John. So John is the CEO of Fusion Pharmaceuticals and the 2018 recipient of the LSO award. So John, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Great, and thanks for the opportunity today. It's great to hear the stories of other companies that I was fortunate to sort of build on the success of, and the sort of the growing Canadian ecosystem. So if we can go to the next slide. So just a little background on Fusion. So we're trying to create the next generation of radiopharmaceuticals for precision oncology. So the idea behind this is lots of people are familiar with external beam radiation. You're shining radiation from the outside the patient to the tumor to eradicate the cancer cells. Fusion's technology is about bringing a type of radiation called alpha irradiation to each individual tumor cell. And the way we do that is the picture, which is on my left, taking an alpha emitting radioactive isotope, actinium-225, and connecting it to that gray antibody, which is designed to target a marker on cancer cells. And the connection between the two is our fast clear linker technology. With that technology, we can connect radiation to a number of different targeting constructs to generate what are called targeted alpha therapies, or TATs. These are administered to patients just by IV injection. And the way that they kill cancer cells is quite unique in that the radiation deposits, the alpha particle deposits a tremendous amount of damage to the cell, but only travels about 1 to 3 cells in distance. And during that distance, it causes massive damage to the cell, including multiple double-stranded DNA breaks. And that's really an effective way to kill even the most resistant cancer cell types. Next slide. So when Fusion Pharma was started, we wanted to build an execution-ready platform that would enable us not to just develop a single product, but multiple targeted alpha therapies. The radiopharmaceutical field over the last number of years has seen tremendous momentum. There's been an acquisition and approval of a alpha therapy called Xofigo for treating bone cancer. Novartis acquired a couple of products in the space. So lots of momentum. And what we wanted to be able to do is develop multiple products. So we have internal research and development. We spun out of the CPDC, which was a Center of Excellence for Commercialization of Research that I started, which built GMP manufacturing and distribution expertise. We've subsequently brought on Cardinal Health, so we have R&D, manufacturing, and the ability to deliver these alpha emitters to hospitals globally. Next slide. So Fusion's platform has been used to sort of continually build out a pipeline. So I'll talk a little bit about our lead program, 1434, which is in a phase 1 clinical trial. And because of that unique mechanism of action of alpha emitters, where we basically physically damage the cells, we've shown some pretty compelling preclinical data on how it synergizes with modern treatments, checkpoint inhibitors, as well as DNA damage repair inhibitors. And this year, our second program will be moving towards an IND, FPI 1966, which targets a marker expressed on bladder cancers. But I'll focus on the lead program just to give you a flavor of what we do. So the insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor is a target that was identified a number of years ago, and it's overexpressed on a wide range of solid tumors. And this chart just gives you a sense of the percentage of different patients within each tumor type that express the target. And years ago, people tried to block the target with antibodies. And it turned out that actually blocking the target didn't really stop the tumor cells from growing. What we do is take an antibody that was one of those taken into the clinic and use it as a way to not block the pathway, but simply bring the radiation inside the cell. And this is one of the advantages of alpha therapy. You're not trying to block a pathway in which the cell can turn on another pathway to continue growing. You're simply using it as a way to sneak in that alpha radiation close to the DNA. And because IGF-1R is expressed on multiple cancer types, it creates the opportunity to have a radiopharmaceutical that goes after multiple tumor types and have broad clinical utility. One of the other powers of this technology, and is part of a theranostic strategy or a precision medicine strategy, is you can keep the same antibody, the same linker technology, but replace the isotope with something that you can image using standard nuclear medicine techniques. So you can basically see where your drug goes. And these are some select images of different tumor types in patients. And you can see the bright orange spots that are indicated by the arrows are showing the drug inside the tumor. And remember, with alpha radiation, if it's inside the cancer cells, it's going to cause that massive damage. So this part of this study also shows that you have multiple different cancer types, ovarian, prostate, sarcoma, colorectal, supporting the fact that IGF-1R is overexpressed on multiple tumor types. And in our clinical trial, we actually use this imaging strategy to select patients to go on to treatment. So that's where the precision medicine strategy comes up. So I was asked to comment, and the folks that were presenting and I were laughing about how fast time goes. And so a few things have happened since 2018 for Fusion. So we opened our Boston office. In fact, I think we've opened 2 Boston offices since that time and moved. We dosed our first patient with our lead program. We completed a Series B financing that was led by Orbimed and Valliant. We really expanded the executive leadership, and the board has evolved. We completed an IPO this past year, and we announced a major partnership collaboration with AstraZeneca, who is moving into, who's a new player within the radiopharmaceutical space. We completed the single dose portion of our study, and the phase 1 have now moved on to multi-dosing of patients. We completed the construction of new labs in Hamilton. We spun out of the Center for Probe Development and Commercialization, which was based at McMaster, where I'm a professor. So I'm pleased to see the growth in Hamilton. and we've added 35 employees to our team and still growing. So a little Fusion at a glance. So we're really well positioned with our platform manufacturing capabilities and strong balance sheet of about 303 million as of our last report, and cash to go into 2024. And really that, as I mentioned, we're going to use that to expand our pipeline and scale the platform. We have about 55 employees located between Hamilton, Boston, the head office, manufacturing R&D in Hamilton, clinical business development and finance in Boston. And really the goal here is to use that to create innovative medicines. A little bit on our milestones. So for the phase 1 multi-dosing data, we are going to report that in 9 to 18 months from the start of multi-dosing, which was in December. And then we're going to move on to the combination studies once we know the recommended phase 2 dose. That other program I mentioned, 1966, we'll do the IND in the first half of this year. And then we're going to continue to expand the pipeline as we go forward and make investments in that and our platform as well. And with that, I'll pause there, and I'm of course happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session.
That's great, thank you. So I'll get all the panelists to come back and turn the cameras back on, and we'll dive into the Q&A portion. Those presentations were all great, and I'm now wondering if John's going to start getting nervous about market capitalization and things like that after hearing Jeff's story. But it's great to have that advice from to not get over your skis, as Cameron said. So if you could roll the clock back 5 years and give yourself advice, if there's something maybe you would change, what advice would you give to your younger self? I'll maybe start with Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's the theme we've really hit on here, which is don't get over your skis. I'll go back more than 5 years to my previous career. I spent 21 years in the plastics industry, and we did, as we saw our prospects expanding there, we did a $500 million IPO, chewed through that very quickly and trying to go very broad, and ended up having to do the same thing, get back to our knitting where the real value was, and really focus on the things that mattered most. Yeah, so if there's one word I would paste up here in my office, it would be focus. I think it's real easy when you get a bunch of cash and a bunch of awards and a lot of people saying, look what else your product can do, is to try and do all those things and be more than you're really ready to be.
Yeah, it's, I used to do a lot of consulting work with companies, and we often said strategy is about figuring out what to say no to more than figuring out what to say yes to. Yeah. Cameron, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, just to emphasize that point, but for sure, but maybe I'd add another, something that I've always found was just extremely sage advice is, do what you love, and that has served me well. I truly love the med device space. It's an opportunity to do business, medicine, and engineering all at once. So it's kind of like you're enjoying 3 lives at the same time. And I just think that that's such important advice. And I see people who have been very successful, they stick at what they're doing and they become world experts at it, and they love it, and they read articles on it every day, and it's their passion and it's their career. And I think that serves you very well in kind of the next lesson that I think I've learned, which is, the timing. If you're coming in with a revolutionary idea, you need to truly, believe in it and be right about it. And you need to time the scaling of that appropriately. And it's really hard to do, if you really have the right idea and you execute on it, but you don't follow up on it aggressively, the world passes you by. You do it too early, then you really need to kind of restructure things and you get ahead of your spending. So I think they feed together. One, really do what you love, and then be committed and passionate and disciplined about the execution of bringing that kind of transformative idea to reality.
John, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I was thinking back to the advice I'd give myself at the beginning. I think part of it is you can never spend enough time finding great people, and never settle. And so I think I've been the beneficiary of working with some incredibly talented people within the executive teams, within the board, within the company itself. So interviewing and growing is always tough, but it's always best to find and wait to get that really great talent. And maybe the other one was just be bold. Like, don't be afraid to actually be bold and think big. I think that's, something for the broader Canadian community is there's incredibly talented people with great IP. Think big. Don't be afraid to think big and be bold. So I think that's the advice I'd give myself 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's a good sort of segue to a really good question that just came in. So all three of you have pretty disruptive technologies that are bold. But that can be difficult to get people to adopt, because it is a major mindset shift for many people to kind of move away from those entrenched technologies. So, John, we'll stay with you. What do you think have been kind of key success in getting people to really believe in a sort of different way of treating cancer?
So, it's twofold. One, I think Cameron brought it up, timing, and some of that you have control over and some of it you don't, what's going in the broader market and what's acceptable. I think the other part is you have to spend a lot of time educating people, and you have to be out there, be visible, talking to individuals, getting groups together. So I think it's, a lot of effort in communication and making sure people see the differentiation and the nuances of your technology. And for a lot of the technologies, including the ones you heard today, it takes a while to really wrap your brain around the potential of those technologies. So I think it's incumbent upon us to communicate what those advantages are.
Yeah. And Cameron, when you think about Synaptive in particular, you have to get sort of surgeons to adopt and hospitals to adopt something that's really disruptive. Was there any sort of one or two things that you think have helped that adoption?
Yeah, I think one is just what John just said, but to add, I think having a very tight feedback loop with these luminary customers and administrators. So not only are we educating them, we're listening to them, and we're guiding our evolution of our product and even the timing based on their feedback and their needs. So it really is kind of a synergistic effort to address problems that they're experiencing in the field. And so, it's I think it really is about finding those luminaries who are going to help you bring that to market and help them educate themselves and be on the podium. And it's very synergistic. I think the other thing is the double-edged sword of competition. And so when we started our endeavor to say, the future of MRI is not high field, which is where GE and Siemens and every research center in the world was driving, we said, well, what about midfield? Kind of a bit of a Goldilocks, not low field, not high field. It's actually in the middle, and here's the physics, here's why it makes sense. And 5 years, people said that was crazy. And now Siemens just launched a midfield product and touting all the benefits that we have. So it's kind of hurry up and educate the world, and then, now we've got some, competition out in the field. And so, that points to, if you feel it is inevitable, patent the heck out of everything, right? And, because at some point, the big players are going to come in your space, and it's going to be great for you in terms of commercially driving the message, but you need to protect yourself too.
Yeah. I think that's, that cliche, right? Competition is the greatest form of flattery, something like that. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Yeah. Jeff, what about you? What's how have you got customers to adopt your technology?
Yeah, in our case, in some of the markets we're trying to serve, we're working in very, I'll even call them tired old industries, where there's a lot of resistance to change. So I talked a fair bit about the importance of partners, but it's not just at the corporate level, it's the person. We have to identify the champion that's going to help us make sure that in implementing our product, it's going to be successful in their environment. You can have a company as a partner like an IKEA who has a CEO saying all the right things. It even mentions your product from time to time as being a solution they're pursuing. But if you don't have the person on the ground in the operation that's going to see that through to success, there's all kinds of blockers that can get in the way. We see people often who have an app on their phone where the leading thing that they're checking regularly is the time to retire app. And you have to avoid that person. I won't name the company, but we have a program ongoing in an Eastern European country where we just have a dynamite young guy on the ground as the program manager who is as passionate about getting the solution through and seeing success for his company as we are about implementing it. If you've built your company right, you have those kind of champions inside, but you want to find the opposite on the other side that's going to embrace them and embrace what you have and drive it to success.
Yeah, that's really great advice. You know, when you think about when you were starting out and you were looking for people to invest, you know, one of the pieces of advice we often give to new companies is, you know, right at the beginning, you know, you're in many ways you're getting married to your investors. This is going to be a long-term partnership that's going to probably last at least 10 years. And so don't necessarily go with the company that's offering you the most money. You want to go with someone that can offer you overall value. So when you think about those initial investors, is there anything that was really, you know, and maybe you can have a, you know, a good story or a bad story. Like, is there anything that you think is critically important when you're out there choosing a venture capital firm or an angel investor to partner with? Why don't we stay with you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think irrespective of any of the other attributes the partner may bring to you, alignment is by far the most important thing. If they don't completely get what you have as a business plan, timing, exact steps that you want to execute on, if you guys aren't in lockstep on that, you're in for trouble in the short term. As soon as those expectations start to diverge, you have a big problem. But I think beyond that, having venture partners that are in some way linked to your success. I'll give an example from our side to help make this more real, but that are linked to your success where they have a vested interest in your success and there's a win-win opportunity. So early on in our formation, Cargill became an important partner. They supply, and the largest supplier of corn type products in the world. And so if we were successful, they were going to be successful somehow as well. So they put a lot of their creativity and horsepower and a very capable person on our board to help see through some of those strategic initiatives. So if you can find a venture partner that has that kind of win-win alignment, it's not always possible, but sure helps if you can find them.
Yeah. John, what about you?
Yeah, I think alignment is critical. I think being able to have that transparent discussion of upside, downside, risk, and feeling comfortable with that group so everybody knows what they're getting involved with. I was really quite fortunate actually that, you know, our early investors I had spent a lot of time with. So I had worked with Genesis Capital before in the past. So I think we got to know each other extremely well. Same with the folks at JJDC. So I think your ability to get to know your investors and how they typically like to build companies, what's their past history. I think a lot of people feel that it's the investors doing diligence on the company. Companies should do equally the same amount of diligence on the investors. And so you get to see, you know, there are some investors who like to invest in a company and look for the quick growth and flip, some who are looking over much longer term. There's nothing wrong with either model. It's just, it has to align with what your plan is. So I encourage people to do a lot of diligence on their investors.
Yeah, that's great advice. Cameron, any thoughts, anything to add to that about choosing a good partner?
Yeah, again, piling on both. And I think that diligence is extremely important. And that's hard, you know, if you're chasing money and you really need to be funded, you don't want to do those calls and get someone saying you that they're not a great investor, you know, you just don't want that information. It's the most important information you can get. You know, I think, again, timing is really important. It's what they've invested in the timing. You know, we've had people invest early that really thought it was the last round. And they're not very patient investors for what comes next, and that's a really big challenge. And you know, there's patient investors that see and understand the impact of the technology, and they know the field. And you know, if it is a big hit and it's revolutionary, it's not a straight line. It's sometimes going to be bumpy. And those are great investors because they'll take those opportunities to reinvest and support you and bring in a network of like investors and kind of a sequencing of you know, the longer term, long view investors, and then bringing in the right ecosystem as you build. And you see that, and you see these kind of natural growth of kind of peer investor groups that I think is indicative of a good growth pathway. So yeah, I think a lot of work and effort and time needs to go into understanding who the candidate investors are and what the timing is appropriate to bring them on board.
Yeah, I think that I hear your point about not wanting to hear that they're not a good investor when they've offered you money to invest, but getting it right from the beginning is good advice. And doing your due diligence. You know, we often say to people, you know, come to us and ask us about the venture capital firms that are bringing you term sheets, because chances are another SVB company has worked with them, and so we can hopefully help you do some of that at diligence, because it's when times are tough, right? And you know, if you think about March, the good VCs all stepped up and threw more money at their companies. Maybe stepping away from that sort of, you know, VC level investment and thinking more about, you know, various sort of government programs that you think were particularly helpful for you as you were getting started. Was there any in particular that you think were, you know, great decisions by, you know, whether, you know, policymakers provincially or federally that really made a difference for you? Cameron, maybe we'll stick with you.
Yeah, you know, again, different programs come in at different phases, and you know, I'll say one, Shred is always there and been fabulous, and it's a huge advantage as being a Canadian company. The Shred credit program, supporting research and giving a good justification of why. NRC, NSERC, IREP just continues to be more important for us as a company. I think years ago, less so, and I think they've really stepped up in a big way, and really quite a strong team that can help guide you as well. It's not just the money, but they really help you make network connections as well. You know, OBIO has been growing and fabulous. MyTech's programs, BioTalent's been hugely helpful for us as we kind of scale our needs. I mentioned BDC came on board, which is fabulous. You know, we're hoping EDC can be helpful in the future. And then there's, you know, bigger programs that have popped out like NGen. We haven't done anything with them yet, but it helps you support kind of manufacturing initiatives and clusters. SIF program's been big. We were participants of part of a program with Sunnybrook Hospital, a Stream 4 SIF program. We hope to do something with them to expand production. And, you know, a lot of companies that have been invested in have benefited from FedDev. We haven't, but we hope to. So, you know, just a message to all these programs. Our peers internationally are getting a lot of support, whether it's companies that really desperately need it or companies that are trying to grow in this current environment. And they're getting great support, and it needs to be matched on the Canadian setting. And the timing is now. It's not next year. If we are going to build this ecosystem, we need to match what everyone else in the world is doing, or else it's a detriment to the companies. So it's just really imploring the government programs to step up for the Canadian ecosystem right now.
So I'm mindful of time, so I'm gonna move on to the last question I'm gonna ask you all. And I think what you were just talking about, being able to compete internationally, is, you know, what do you think are the biggest sort of challenges or barriers that are getting in your way right now, particularly as a Canadian company? So, you know, what can be done to maybe help remove some of those barriers? Jeff, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, one that's really reared its head in the last couple of years for us as a smaller company is just the regulatory environment. And I think it's different. It is a different regulatory environment than John and Cameron are facing. But in sending our products around the world, having to be REACH compliant suddenly when entering the European market, as a small company where you don't have a regulatory organization, the likes of what a Dow Chemical company would have, for example, is a significant disadvantage. And I think anything that can be done to help smaller companies navigate that regulatory environment and do some of the due diligence on some kind of a pooled basis or supported basis would be very helpful. It's very, very expensive. I've got a regulatory question on my desk here right now, where if we want to go ahead on a very speculative opportunity, it's a $55,000 legal bill just to get started. And so those are big decisions for a small company. That would be, by far the largest one that's reared its head in the last few years for us.
And John, what about you? What sort of barriers or challenges do you feel have gotten in your way?
For a rapidly growing company, it's always talent and talent pool in terms of, we have incredible strength from, certainly in Ontario, from a science side, a technical side, and from a quality side. I think the pool of people with the experience who, on the sort of necessarily building out public companies, I think was a challenge because there was a lot of competition for great people. So I think one of the things that certainly we're trying to do is to support the ecosystem is for those companies that are emerging, is be able to support them and provide advice and, hopefully create a talent pool to help grow the next generation of companies as well. So I think as the community grows, the pool of experienced individuals will grow, and it will sort of help solve that issue. But certainly early on, it was tough to find people with the experience that the company was looking for.
Yeah, we hear that a lot for sure, accessing talent. And now though, what we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, where there are some more mature companies, you're seeing that sort of that impact of some people who've got a track record of success now going into other companies. So I think we're on a good track there. And Cameron, what about you? What barriers or challenges have gotten in your way?
I think funding has always been a challenge, I think, for a rapidly growing medtech company, and it's evolving. And I think the more that we can put wins on the board and give bigger returns to the shareholder base here, that's naturally going to keep getting better and better. And hopefully we're going to see a lot of wins through this kind of big surge in med tech valuations and IPOs. So hopefully we'll get some wins on the board, and that'll kind of enrich the shareholder base. But a big one that we keep kind of hitting our head up against the wall with is just having uptake of our technologies in Canada. And, it's complex. It's a complex issue, but when you want to bring people to Toronto and show your technology off, you want to do it by your home office, and it's a real challenge when you can't get that uptake and support in the Canadian ecosystem. And our technologies end up going all around the world. We're in Middle East, Australia, Pakistan, moving into China, US, Europe. And our employees work really hard to build world-leading technologies that enable better care for patients. And often our loved ones are patients, and you can't deliver that care here, but we can across the border. So I think we really need to put more pressure on it. I think Michael Porter, very famous lecturer in Harvard, it's basically you need to optimize your technology in your backyard. Like that's where you develop it. That's where you optimize it. And if you can't have clinical uptake in your backyard, it's very, very tough. So, we see that across many companies in the ecosystem. And in fact, not just in medtech, this is something the Canadian Council of Innovators has tackled. And it's a commonality across tech companies. It's adapted very quickly at the South, but just not here.
Yep, us too.
Is it regulatory, or is it Canadian mindset?
I think it's a Canadian. It's a Canadian mindset somehow. I think regulatory. I don't think so. I mean, quite honestly, I've experienced this before, where there's been rapid uptake of our prior company's technology. In fact, we did all the studies for Blue Cross Insurance in Canada, and that helped us kind of pave the way for international growth. But it's a very risk-averse system when it comes to procurement, and just really, it's one of the weirdest markets in the world. Usually, you see very strong home market participation in a company's success, and we just don't have it here, and it's a uniquely difficult kind of challenge that we have here.
Yeah, that's great advice, and surely there could be some policy that could address that with just things around adopting Canadian technologies, policies around that. We'll add this to our next policy forum at LSO. I'll make sure Jason gets that on the list. So with that, I'm going to thank you all. I didn't, of course, get to all the questions that came in. There was definitely some really specific ones for you, John, around the technology. So I'm sure if anybody wants answers about more detailed around how the fusion radiopharmaceuticals work, they're probably on your website. So I'll leave that for now, and I'm going to hand it to our fearless leader, Jason Field, to close us out for the day. But thank you so much, everyone. This has been a really fun panel to moderate.
Well, thank you, Anne. Thank you for moderating this this panel, and thanks to our participants, Jeff and John and Cameron. Cameron, you left on a great note there. This has been something that has been a concern for us here at LSO. We, as you know, are absolutely committed to ensuring that we have the right environment for companies like all of yours to succeed and go global from here in Ontario. And a key part of that is getting the Canadian health systems to adopt technologies here at home, and to have Canadian technologies in general adopted here in a robust market. So rest assured that's something we're definitely working on. I think COVID-19 has certainly shone a light on the need for us to have greater capacity across our life sciences ecosystem, and that's going to strengthen our health and economic security going forward. So we are definitely working to send that message loud and clear. Brian, if you could pull up our announcements. I have a few upcoming events. My team loves having fun with my head on Photoshop. So our next week we have our LSO Celebration of Success. Typically we would gather to honor our awardees around this time of year. Unfortunately, with the current situation, we are having to delay the actual awards ceremony until the fall. However, we will be getting together for some virtual networking on February 24th. This year's awardees are going to be in attendance, so please come and join us in congratulating them on their incredible success and contributions to the life sciences sector, and to network with your colleagues who I'm sure some of you have not seen in some time. So it'll be a great opportunity, and there's lots of prizes and giveaways and fun activities happening that evening. Come check it out. It's going to be a blast. Our AGM is coming up, and that's going to be on March 18th, and we have a great speaker lined up. Mark Lavonin, some of you might remember Mark. He is retired CEO from Sanofi Pasteur, but he's currently the co-chair of Canada's COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force. So Mark's going to give us his insights into the vaccines, development, rollout, etc. So very timely topic. Join us on March 18th, and it should be a very informative session. And Cameron mentioned some great programs that are happening in our ecosystem to support companies and employment and professional development. And one of the programs he mentioned was BioTalent Canada. I'm actually quite honored to be a board member of BioTalent Canada. In fact, we have a board meeting this afternoon. They have some amazing programs, and one of their current programs is their student work placement program. I would encourage you to check this out. This is a tough time, not only for companies, but for students and young professionals as well. And this program really makes it easy and affordable to make these connections and to hire students and benefit employers as well. So please check out that program. And finally, I want to thank all of our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Alexion, Pfizer, Silicon Valley Bank. Thank you, Anne. Sanofi, Shift Health, Horizon, Merck, Innovative Medicines Canada, and PR Associates. Our gold sponsors, Taiho Pharma, Admare, Antibody, Stryker, and Biotalent Canada. And our silver sponsors, EY, Roche, CRB, BDO, and U of T Arts and Science Co-op program. Thank you to all of our sponsors for supporting us. Thank you for attending. I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I did, and stay safe and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.